The other one that's worth talking to with Australia, though, that is part of the shipping charges, and I think is more prevalent in Australia than some other countries, is your delivery area surcharges.
Delivery area surcharges?
Yeah, or the remote area surcharges, you could call them rural surcharges. Basically, when they have to go off the beaten path to deliver, they charge you extra.
So yeah, if I'm shipping to Singapore, that's probably not applying.
Right.
But if you're going to Australia, going to the Outback,
mm-hmm.
yeah, you might be hit with that. But how expensive could that be?
Oh, it could be anywhere from, well, let's see. What do we got here? I got some notes. $30 or 30 cents a pound for UPS. FedEx could be anywhere from $3.95 to $64. So they actually have 3 tiers, which is $3.95, $49 US. I'm going out.
FedEx has 3 tiers. 3 tiers.
Yeah. How far out in the bush?
Well, $3.95 wasn't that much.
No,
but I want to go a little. I kind of want to get in the middle out there.
A little bit?
Yes.
So we're going to go from rural to maybe super rural?
Yeah, so there's some crocs, but there's a paved road.
Okay. That's $49. Now, what if you want to go really deep into the bush? Like we're talking like...
Just crocs. Dirt roads.
$64.
64
US dollars.
Oh, US dollars. Wow. Welcome to another episode of the Decoding Cross-Border E-Commerce Podcast. We're your hosts, Clint Reed, here with Aaron Bezant. Good day.
G'day, mate.
G'day, mate.
Was that was that good? Did it sound authentic?
I thought so.
Okay.
Well, I've been to Australia, so it counts as I can now say that whenever I want.
I've seen Crocodile Dundee, so does that
help? Love that show.
And I love the late Crocodile Hunter too. So
yes.
In fact, did you know, this is totally a random tangent here, but did you know that his home and the zoo that he was on is very close to our Australian office?
I did do know because I've been there. We went there.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be out there soon.
Yep.
So yeah, we have an Australia office, and today we're going to have a podcast talking about e-commerce selling to Australia, and just some of the nuances to think about. I mean, we'll talk everything about tax, duty, a little bit about carrier stuff, but why is I'm sure you'll sprinkle your joke in somewhere, Aaron. I think we just let that, you'll fit it in somewhere. Why sell to Australia? What are some of the e-commerce retailer? Doesn't matter actually where you are in the world, I think, but what are some of the benefits you think to selling into Australia?
There's a lot of people buying in Australia. It's a very developed country. They're they're buying a ton of stuff online, and they often have to look outside of Australia to get some of the goods that they want. But there's also a lot of savings around the duty and tax world that we can talk through on this. That just, you've got willing buyers. There's, it's pretty cost effective from a duty and tax perspective. The only downside might be, depending on what part of the world you're shipping from, the shipping cost could be something to consider, that are a little higher, but it's a very, very,
and it's English speaking.
Market.
And so that's anytime there's an English speaking market that's well developed, big potential.
Yep.
Definitely a lot of opportunity, I think, for any retailer that wants to open up that market. It doesn't matter what you're selling. I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's usually one of the, if we look at our customer base, Australia is a very, very healthy country for almost every single one of our merchants.
Yep. De minimis. Why is Australia de minimis so favorable? And what is the de minimis?
The de minimis is, it's a little bit of a trick question for Australia. Yeah, so for a small merchant, it's 1,000 Australian dollars for both duty and tax. That equates to, if we convert it to US dollars, $666 in today's exchange rate.
Oh, wow. Yikes.
Yeah. So, however, back in 2018, they enacted a low value tax law, which means for larger merchants selling over 75,000 Australian dollars, you have to actually collect and remit GST, which is 10% tax. So really, anything under that 1,000 Australian dollars, small merchants, it's duty and tax free. Larger merchants that are registered and remitting GST, it's 10% GST.
Well, but to clarify, for small merchants that are the merchant of record, so if you're a small merchant and you're using a service, whether you're selling on a marketplace or you're using a third party to be the merchant of record for you, they're going to collect tax even though you're small. So there is an advantage if you're small of selling direct. and being the merchant of record and keeping that, staying under that de minimis of 1,000 and under that threshold of 75,000 AUD.
Yeah, and I think the merchant of record thing you're talking about, another classic instance with that, it would be like a marketplace. So if you're a small seller selling on a marketplace, the marketplace is the one that's probably registered for GST and collecting. Yep. So,
okay, so let's dive into this tax a little bit. We did already briefly talk about the Australia low value tax scheme, which I think came out in 2019, right?
2018.
Was it 2018?
Yeah.
Okay. And they were really targeting the larger marketplaces, larger sellers, easy cash grab. They killed it. It's been great for them. We've talked a lot about that in some other episodes.
Well, they kind of started the trend, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
they did.
US had their Nexus stuff, but they weren't thinking international. But Australia was, in the US, we were thinking state to state, and then international kind of came along with it, which happened at around the same time as Australia.
The Wayfair.
Yep.
In the US. Yep.
So Australia started this trend, and then it was like, it worked, and it's been a copycat game ever since.
Yeah. I think I think the episode is on low value tax schemes, right? We have an episode on that and talk about, the UK, IOS, all that. Anyway, let's keep talking about Australia here. The GST rate there is 10%. And how is GST calculated?
It's 10% of the cost of your goods and the shipping costs. And then if there is any duty applicable on a higher value shipment, it'll also be 10% of the duty.
So they'll tax the duty. But it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the GST similar to Canada, right? Now let's go into the duty then a little bit, because, or did we miss anything on tax that?
No, I
like
think it's pretty
important?
straightforward.
I mean, pretty
10%.
straightforward, right?
Yeah.
10% or zero, if you can, stay under that threshold.
And I think for most of our listeners, it's going to be 10% of the goods, the shipping costs, and if there's any duty applicable. Yep.
Do I need to worry about duty?
Depends.
I'm an e-commerce retailer.
You selling
my
high
average
end
order value is $150.
No.
Why?
I mean, because duty doesn't apply until it's over 1,000 Australian dollars. So we're talking, and this is looking at 1,000 Australian dollars of just the goods. Not so even if you're crazy high shipping costs that push you over 1,000, it's not that. It's looking specifically at the value of the goods.
So instead of having high shipping costs, I'm going to have high product costs.
You could try that. Well, you'd have low product costs
and high shipping costs. Yes.
Yeah. You can try that, but you probably won't convert very many orders that way if we go back to our previous podcast discussing how to price that stuff. So, so I would say for the large majority of e-commerce sellers, unless you're selling high-end goods or really high average order values, duty's probably not.
Okay, Aaron, I sell computers.
How nice are these computers?
They were very nice. All right. So now what do I need to worry about going into Australia? Talk to me a little bit about some of the average duty rates, how duty is calculated, and, for the retailers that do have higher value, or every once in a while, especially apparel, people buy, multiple outfits, or they're really expensive, just one outfit, go over that, $666 US threshold, 1,000 AUD. What do they have to look out for?
All right. So duty is actually pretty standardized for most products. It's typically 5%.
This is interesting to me. I hate to say that I was surprised, but I was surprised how many goods are just 5%.
In fact, it's over half, right? If you look at the HS tariff schedule, it's over half of them are 5% going into Australia.
Like a rug, 5%, apparel, 5%.
Most of your consumer goods are going to be 5%.
Yeah.
Now, here's the interesting thing, though. What we talked about, tax being applied to both the product and the shipping cost and the duty. And normally in most countries, the duty is applied to the tax and the CIF value, the product as well as the shipping cost. But in Australia, it's a little different. They only apply duty to the value of the goods, not shipping, which is a little unique to have tax one way, duty another way.
Ease of math.
I don't know.
I can't think of a good reason.
Yeah. I don't know, but it's something to be aware of in the way it's calculated.
So FOB, right, is what,
Yep.
And there's the 5%, which is whenever you hear that, it's ad valorem in, is the percentile. But what other types of, okay, let's get out of the 5%. What other things might apply? Or should we go through an example?
Let's go through an example.
Okay. All right.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Pulled up our dashboard, which allows us to calculate duties and taxes. We're going to go over the de minimis in this example. So let's go, say we're going from United States to Australia.
Yeah, just pick a territory. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
What do you want to sell?
Ooh.
What are you selling?
You're guiding me through this. What should I sell?
Yeah. You know what? You always wear some good t-shirts. Let's buy a t-shirt. Let's buy an overpriced, like authentic.
So my t-shirts are great because they're all movie references.
Yeah. So what's one that's like super rare that'd be really expensive?
The one that I'm wearing right now.
The Jack Burton Trucking Company.
Yes. The Big Trouble in Little China.
Ah, yes. I mean, this is
what I want to wear is this tank top. I'm going to do this tank top. And
it's a super rare one, and because there's only so many of them in the world, and it cost $800 for this t-shirt.
Yep, it does.
And you really wanted it.
Yep, I did.
Yeah, go ahead and throw in $10 in shipping. They gave you a good deal on shipping.
Okay. Well, leave the carrier out.
Yeah, leave that out, and let's just go ahead and hit get quote.
Okay.
So now click on the duty, taxes, and fees. Let's expand out some details here. So if the first line we see 5%.
Yep.
On the cost. So that's that's
right.
The FOB value. That's the cost of the goods. So it's only 5% on the $800. And that's it. So $40 in duty. Now, if you notice on the tax, though, you've got 10% on the $800.
Yep.
10% on the shipping.
Right.
Which is $1. I'm pretty good at math. 10% of $10 is $1. And then it's also 10% on the $40 in duty.
So another $4 in tax on the duty.
So a total of $85.
Whoa.
Oh, yes.
What is happening at the bottom of this? This doesn't make any sense.
So here's the interesting thing. Everything is really, really cost effective under $1,000 Australian dollars. Once you go over that, all of a sudden, bam, you get hit with some government fees.
Okay, so the people that are listening, which is probably the majority of you that can't see the screen, we broke out the duty and the GST. And inside of the fees, there's an Australia import declaration charge of 43 AUD and an Australia import processing charge of 50 AUD.
Mm-hmm. I'm good at math. It's 93 Australian dollars total.
Wow.
And so any shipment, once it goes over that, all of a sudden, the way it's processed and everything, they throw in these fees are really, really expensive. So something to be aware of, because if you sell a lot of high-end goods, it's not just in fact, if you notice, those fees are more than what the duty rate is.
Yeah, that's super expensive. Okay, so now I don't want to go through a whole nother demo here, but what if this was like a cigar? Like, how would that calculate differently?
That's where it gets interesting. So in fact, in a lot of countries, anything tobacco related is often really expensive, for one, and sometimes it's weight based. So it's not a percentage of the value of the cigars; they weigh it. And so we actually saw this when we were visiting customs organization in a totally different country. They were pulling out cigars out of a box, putting it on a scale, and weighing it, and then the duty amount was based on that. In Australia, it is over 1,800 Australian dollars per kilogram. So if you picked a couple pounds of cigars or 1 kilogram of cigars, the duty alone would be over $1,800.
Oh, geez.
Plus 10% on that. And
so we went, that's quite a leap, going from 5%, on pretty much average everything. I think over the majority of the tariff schedule is 5%, right, to Australia. Mm-hmm. And now you're, that's a bit of an increase.
Yeah. Why don't trade agreements matter that much in e-commerce for Australia?
Well, because most e-commerce retailers are going to be selling stuff that's under 1,000 AUD, so there's going to be no duty.
Right.
And if you go over, you really have to know what you're doing if you're going to get your trade agreement applied. We'll just say that.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. We saw the import fees in that calculation. The Are you familiar with the differences between the two? We have it in our country guide.
Oh, I used to be. I'm a little rusty on those, but yeah, there's the import processing charge and the import declaration charges. Those are government fees that are assessed. Doesn't matter how you ship it; they're just going to apply. And I don't remember the exact difference, but
It's for processing the import declaration.
Okay,
that's what that one's for. The FID charge, right? The full import declaration charge goes to the Australian Border Force.
Do you know what this all?
That sounds like from a movie or something. Australian Border Force. That's what they call their customs there.
So let me tell you what this feels like.
Yeah,
I've been shopping for a new camp trailer to take my family out camping more. And if I was buying from a private individual, it's just the price of the price. But when I buy from a dealership, they always have to throw in their documentation fees and other dealer fees, right?
Yes,
it kind of feels like that to me.
It does,
right? But to talk about another fee that's relevant for some product types, if I go back to my days when I was working in e-commerce, we used to sell tires going into Australia, and we'd get hit with quarantine fees.
Ooh,
so
how much were those?
Oh, it was expensive. I don't remember, but it was up in these range. It was expensive because they'd have to take it, quarantine it, because they're very sensitive in Australia of bringing goods into their ecosystem. So I could get around the quarantine fee by putting a declaration on the commercial invoice that said these tires, I almost have it memorized still after all these years, are new and have been stored, covered, and are free of mosquito larvae and something else. Like basically we have to say, look, they're clean, because they don't want to bring in goods that are going to damage their ecosystem. So if there's any concern, they're going to quarantine them, and you get charged for that. So just kind of be aware of those kind of things. But you can usually get around them with statements and things on the commercial invoice to let them know that nope, these are new tires and you're good to go, and that problem went away pretty quick.
What other fees do you have to worry about though? Not that particular fee, the quarantine fee was country level.
That's a government.
But now you're shipping with a carrier. There are some fees that you need to be concerned about, probably specifically when you're going into Australia. What would you say those are?
Oh, for sure. Just like any. Okay, we're going to go back to the de minimis. If you go over $1,000 and the carrier is now fronting and paying or advancing the duty and tax revenue to the Australian government on your behalf, along with all the country fees, then disbursement fees will come into play.
Disbursement advancement fee, that's for advancing the money in customs. Yep.
And so they vary by, we've talked about these on other ones, but they'll be buried in the duty and tax bill along with the duty and taxes that the carrier bills back to you. And they can range from, let's see, like UPS is a minimum of $22.50 Australian dollars. FedEx is around $20 Australian dollars minimum. But if it's a lot of duty and tax, it can go over that because it's a percentage, usually about 3-ish% is typical. And then DHL is actually based on where you're shipping from.
That's if it's going DDP, it's based on where it's shipping from,
yes,
correct?
Yes. So, correct. So if it's DDU and collecting a delivery, they're going to collect
a
it from
similar
your recipient.
fee to the other carriers. Yeah.
Which actually the DDU experience, you've got to think about this. If you're an Australian consumer ordering something over $1,000 Australian dollars, you get hit with published rates on all of these carrier fees and all of these import declaration charges, et cetera.
So there's a COD fee in there, which we're not even,
it's going to be
expensive.
Yeah. Bad experience. But like shipping from the US, DHL's typically $17 US, but it varies by country. But the other one that's worth talking to with Australia, though, that is part of the shipping charges, and I think is more prevalent in Australia than some other countries, is your delivery area surcharges.
Delivery area surcharges?
Yeah, or the remote area surcharges, you could call them rural surcharges. Basically, when they have to go off the beaten path to deliver, they charge you extra.
So yeah, if I'm shipping to Singapore, that's probably not applying.
Right.
But if you're going to Australia, going to the Outback, yeah, you might be hit with that. But how expensive could that be?
Oh, it could be anywhere from, well, let's see. What do we got here? I got some notes. $30 or 30 cents a pound for UPS. FedEx could be anywhere from $3.95 to $64. So they actually have 3 tiers, which is $3.95, $49 US. I'm going out.
FedEx has 3 tiers. 3
Yep.
tiers.
Yeah. How far out in the bush?
Well,
are we going?
$3.95 wasn't that much. No,
No.
but I want to go a little. I want to get in the middle out there.
A little
You
bit.
know? Yes.
So we're going to go from rural to maybe super rural.
Yeah.
or-
So there's some Crocs, but there's a paved road.
Okay. That's $49. Now, what if you want to go really deep into the bush? Like we're talking like
Just Crocs. Dirt roads.
$64.
64
$64
AUD.
US dollars.
Oh, US dollar. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
'Cause
so
this-
AUD, that's going to be
that-
almost 100 AUD.
And again, these will vary based on where you're shipping from. We just looked at the US tariff schedule, but super expensive. And DHL's was $49.
Wow.
So very expensive. So if you're selling a lot of consumer goods to metropolitan areas, not a big deal. If you're selling ATV parts or
I think I know how to get around these fees, Aaron. I think I know how to get around them.
How do you get around them?
I'm going to ship USPS.
Oh,
Or with the post.
Yeah, you ship through the post, you can get around
Ship
it.
it through the post.
As long as you're shipping stuff that's small enough for
Right.
the post to
Yeah.
handle.
But this
Absolutely.
is where sometimes post has service levels that are more expensive shipping wise than
Mhm.
the other carriers that you don't get. Sometimes hard to get the same discounts. But these other things, these other fees can add up substantially, especially out of area, residential, those kind of stuff. And it's just a lot cleaner. So
Absolutely.
it's just, know your carriers. Hey, I think we had a 4-part series around picking your international shipping carrier. You might want to go listen to that one. That some of the payment methods in Australia are going to be pretty standard. Credit card's going to be the top one. They do have pulley payments, which is like a bank transfer type, payments. But buy now, pay later, it's pretty popular there. So I'd say it's pretty standard, kind of like the U.S. You did talk about the tires, and I wanted to just quickly go into just a few of the prohibited and restricted items into Australia. First off, the difference between prohibited and restricted is, though it should be maybe obvious based on what it says, prohibited means it is not coming in. Unless you have like something way up high that's going to happen, that's going to let you get that item in. So, some of the prohibited items going there, body armor, warfare stuff, pornography. There's a few items that are just going to be prohibited going into Australia. Restricted, this is kind of similar to the tires, right? I would think tires would fall probably under restricted, that you need some type of would they fall under restricted,
No.
or they just need a license?
You don't really even need a license.
Okay.
It's just you just have to make sure that they're good, clean, new tires.
Yeah.
So
like in restricted items, there's like, if you have something that's foreign grown, and has a biosecurity risk import analysis, things like that are going to have a totally different process, and you need approval. Work with your shipping carrier if you have some restricted items that you want to get in there. And sometimes that might be, drugs, food products, things like that. A lot of times fall under restricted, not necessarily prohibited.
So I have a question from a personal experience. Are boomerangs restricted or prohibited? Because I kept trying to ship one to Australia, but it kept coming back to me.
Why? Wait, I thought you had a...
I do have another one about boomerangs. So what do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back to you?
What?
A stick.
Those were the boomerangs I use.
I threaded the one joke in there so well, you didn't even know it was a joke.
No, because I was expecting the other joke. Okay, look, we do have a good country guide on this. I think most of everything we talked about is in the country guide and our docs at Zonos.com. But look, I think selling to Australia is a great place to go, and hopefully today was helpful for our audience and knowing what to expect going into Australia.